and feel free to ask questions as we go along.
Thanks.
And in your packet here, I've got the PowerPoint presentation. Oh, yeah, that's engaged. The next one here is called the Land Coalition Strategic Plan. And that'll give you a good view of everything that we've been doing as a community. And that's pretty much covered in the PowerPoint. I've got this one right here called Land Coalition Social Media Progress Report. And I'll give you an idea of what we're doing with the media to promote the needs of our community. And then this green one is a shameless plug for our advocacy. We want you to sign up, and you'll get our action alerts if you sign up on that green sheet. And then the last one here is talking points that we did at Assembly budget hearing on our community and its relation to poverty. So there are a lot of different points in there and how we're using it. So that's what you have in your packet. And I'll just go through the PowerPoint. And if you have questions, feel free to ask as we go. So the Lanterman Coalition, actually I should back up and tell you who I am. Tony Anderson of the ARC of California. I'm the executive director there. And we also at the ARC, we represent in Sacramento United Cerebral Palsy as well. So we have 22 chapters of the ARC and 11 affiliates in the United Cerebral Palsy. And we represent them in Sacramento. But I also have the privilege to be the chair of the Lanterman Coalition. And the Lanterman Coalition is this group of all of the statewide organizations that represent some portion of our community, people with developmental disabilities and their families. So this includes labor also. It includes Regional Centers Association, ARCA. It includes Disability Rights California, and different provider organizations that provide different kinds of services, like infant development, or work programs, work-related programs, or supported living, or other kind of residential services. So it really covers every part of our system. So we get all these associations together on a monthly basis to talk about what our community needs. And for the last 2 years, we've been really on board with one another, in agreement with what needs to be done in our community. And so that's the great news. We've been meeting for 12 years. So you can imagine, just for the last 2 years, we've gotten everybody on the same page. And partly it's because things have gotten so bad in our community that we all agree at the same time that nobody has done well. The entire system is about to collapse. So every person in the developmental disabilities community is going to be impacted by the system collapse, the way we see it.
So what do you mean by that? Because financial reason or because
It
structural?
is both. It's financial because of many years of neglect and cuts and freezes to the system.
Okay.
So there's we've had a history now of freezing the rates, and now our rates are amongst the lowest in the country for supporting people with developmental disabilities.
Our county specifically is the most lowest in the state.
So
Particular county you're
So
sitting
that
in
would
right
be
here
the
is-
lowest in the entire country, because California is already the lowest in the country. So you would have the lowest, you would win completely.
Falling through the cracks the whole way anyhow.
So
I'm
that's-
not shocked.
But that's, and you're talking about additional support services that are on top of the developmental services. And the developmental services is the one program that cut by far more than any other program in health and human services during the recession years. So you have other programs that are extremely important to our community, like in-home support services, Medi-Cal, we've got the CalWorks programs, we have all these other pieces that support some portion of our community, and they're all shredded. The safety net is shredded, right? So if all of that is falling apart at the same time, the specialized services for people with developmental disabilities is falling apart, now you've created a crisis situation. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're talking about with the legislators. So this second slide here kind of shows you who's in the Lanterman Coalition, but I kind of described it, that it's everybody. And the next slide talks about what we're asking for with the legislators. So what we're saying is that in order to stop the current system in collapse, we need to infuse 10% across the board rate increase. And that wouldn't solve the problem, because we have a myriad of problems. But it would stop what we're seeing now. Because we're seeing larger organizations who have been around, who maybe they've been able to take people when they lost their programs in maybe smaller or mid-sized organizations. But now even the larger ones are starting to say they can't do it. And so they're shutting down programs and they're creating waiting lists in California. In California, we've always been very proud of the Lanham Act, which is the only state that has in statute an entitlement. So we've made a promise to everybody with developmental disability and their families that will support them. But in fact, we haven't put the money into the system in many, many years to be able to keep that promise.
What do you think that the 10% increase will become reality? What's the possibility?
Well,
you propose
we
10%.
start with what we need. So the legislators need to know from our view, and we are the experts in the community because it is our community, they need to know what we think will turn the system around. So we've laid out what will turn it around. Now, it's quite a bit of money. So, because they've also taken quite a bit of money over the years. They've taken over $1 billion of funds from developmental services. They've divested to an extreme amount during the recession. So during this time, they've removed that money, and now we're asking them to put a small portion of it back. $1 billion, we wouldn't be asking for $1 billion. But what we are asking for is about $272 million of state funds. We just got the new numbers. The number had been higher, but the department has been asked to run the numbers and see what it costs. And that's the new number that the department has agreed to, $272 million state funds. Now you would get additional money from the federal government, and the total would be $404 million additional money into the system. And this is what we think needs to happen just to stabilize what's going on in our community. And that would stop this trend of collapse. So it's not going to move us forward. It's not going to create the new and innovative programs that all the families are looking for, but it will stop what we're seeing right now. Because what you're getting now is less and less options, less and less choices for you to go to, and the choices that you have are going to be based on numbers, groups, larger groups of people. And like you said earlier, the cookie cutter models, those are going to be the cheaper models. And that's what you're going to get offered. So that's not anything any of us want. That's not what the federal government is requiring for using the federal dollars. So it has to be corrected. And it has to be corrected immediately. And it's the only way to begin to move it along. So that's what we're mapping. The second piece to move it along in the out year is a 5% COLA each year so that you can continue to move this in the right direction until you fix the rate structure. Because that's what we all have recognized, is that the rate structure in California is the worst in the country.
When do you say rate? What's the definition of the rate? How do you measure it?
So these are all of the providers, local community providers, who provide day programs, or supported employment programs, or residential programs, supported living, all those, they all get a rate for providing service. And it used to be based on the cost of providing the service. They used to do what's called cost analysis. They would turn that in. And then you would base their rate on their cost. And so last time they did that was in the 90s, in the early 90s. And so you're basing today's rate on the cost of providing services back in the 90s. So obviously that wouldn't work because everything costs more.
Like a
today.
minimum wage, how do you measure the cost of labor?
Right, so your cost statement would be based on what your wages were in 1995, right? How much gas costs you during that time, milk, everything. So everything costs more.
The minimum wage then was $4.25
So $4.25 was the minimum wage.
to 95.
So that's what their cost statements are based on.
I can buy groceries for a month on $1. I can't even buy one item.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what they're basing the rates on. And then the other is the residential facilities they've changed their model. They don't usually have 6 people in a group home anymore. They have 4 typically. But their rate is based on serving 6. So everything has completely changed since they created the rates, but they haven't changed the rates. So it needs to be fixed. And while we're waiting for that, that's what the money will do. The influx of money will help stabilize it, and then you will see what needs to be done. If you based it right away on today's cost of providers, what providers are paying to provide services, it would be artificially depressed. Because they're not doing what they would want to do. They're not doing what most people would want them to do. They don't have any more middle management anymore. Where's their training budget? Have those kinds of things in there. All of those things went out the door when the freezes came up, and when the cuts came up. There were more and more things that people had to do to survive. And so you wouldn't operate. You wouldn't want them to operate the way they're doing. It's not the model we're looking for. So that's how you begin to move us down the path. And that's how we play it.
I do get a little concerned though, because when I do go to certain meetings, for certain departments, and everybody's driving off in their brand spanking new car, but they're not saying anything about services or, our training is only 8 hours, or it's just really a poor effort put forward for the job at hand. But everybody else, involved seems to be doing pretty well. It's my observation.
Yeah. Well, I tell you,
So
you can
what-
open their books with these local nonprofits, and they're not able to pay the amount of money that they need to pay the workers, and they're not able to do all the things that they would need to operate in an efficient manner. The money is just not there anymore. And if you look at it, the fact that it's the lowest in the country, and yet it's the highest cost of living, except for Hawaii, in the country, there's no wonder that we would be in such poor shape. We're taking a three-pronged approach, and that is one, to do the high-level lobbying work with the legislators. So we're going in and meeting with the legislators and telling them the story of what's happened to our system. And then the other is we've got some local groups and grassroots, and that's really the most important piece of how we are going to change the policy. So this is
Three.
on page 3,
Okay.
on the top. So, and the grassroots is always the most powerful piece that we have, because we, as a group, don't use money to lobby like other groups do. We use zero, right? Unless you look at our salaries that we pay to pay for us. But we don't use money to influence policy. So how are we going to we don't have a PAC, right? We don't send money to legislators who are running for office. We have a compelling story and a powerful and large community. We're serving 280,000 people with developmental disabilities. They all have family members, parents, friends, and we rely on all of those people to stand up, to be loud, and to talk to their legislators. And they do. And that's how we're able to make change over the years. Now, I just described to you a system that's in bad shape. So we're doing so much better than we would have been if we didn't have it. You don't even want to know how bad a shape we would be if we weren't able to influence the legislators in some way. Now, obviously, those with big money, they have a way of moving agendas along. But this is our way, and that's with the use of individuals constantly talking to their legislators and getting them to respond. So that's why we need the grassroots, because that's our power.
So you said your power of influence is the one-handed compelling story, touch the people, make them understand what's the need, disability community. On the other hand, move the grassroots, people stand up, talk to their legislators, and have their
Yes.
voice heard.
Yes.
So
Now we're right there in Sacramento, right, a couple blocks away, a lot of the different organizations. And we go in, people who have direct access, because we're right there. And we're constantly meeting and telling people what's happening. So we can do that piece. But none of it will make any difference if we don't have the grassroots pushing the pressure onto the building. So, and that's where our power is. So we can be on them and at the right times and all of that, but it won't matter if we don't have the families standing up and fighting. So,
And how do you encourage the families to stand up and fight? Because in my experiences, they usually just get an automated letter back.
uh-huh. Well,
So other than
I
that,
just got an email.
and I just don't feel like filing, drafting a petition.
Yeah, no, you
No,
know what?
I'm-
So many in our community will
There's
pick up
got-
the phone and they will call their legislator and they'll start talking. And if they're not there, they'll make an appointment for when they come back to town.
Uh-huh.
And they'll be patient with that. Or they'll start, you know, they'll call them at their office in Sacramento and say, when you come back, I've got to talk to you because
So you-
something bad is happening.
So you're recommending a
in my
direct
community.
visit to their office?
Yes, and that's what makes the difference. And then if we have sometimes groups get together and they'll send, you know, or they'll do a rally in front of City Hall, or they'll do it with their legislators. Anything they can do to bring the attention of what's happening. Because legislators, this is a small piece. It's a $5 billion budget in, you know, over $100 billion of the state budget. So it's a very small portion of all of the things that they'll do. And developmental disabilities represents 1% of the population. So it's something that they may not ever have some experience with. But we need to make sure that they understand what that promise was that was made by the state. And that we need to keep the promise. We need to fund the land and why that's important to all of our families. And the good news is that we're getting really good responses from both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, are very supportive of our story and our system. So hopefully this year was the year for us to make some advancement. But it really does require the families to call and have those meetings. And I say fight, but it could really be just explaining what is going on in your life and how could it be different if you have the support that you need. And then you're not like somebody sitting around doing nothing. You're somebody who's trying to make their way through life. Your son or daughter has a disability, and so there's barriers to society. And you want to remove those barriers. Nobody wants anybody isolated from community. So make people understand that story. And that's the story that needs to be told over and over. That's the whole purpose for the land, is to make sure that people can participate fully in their communities. And there are barriers, so this is what our system does to remove them.
And that was the whole thing that actually ever prompted me to go see a legislator, was Greg's email that I got several years ago, encouraging me to go to my legislator, which at the time was, I think, Assembly Member Emerson. So I put together, I guess he groups people to go with me, and I met Peter Atwood for the first time. He showed up, and there were several other people that came, some from, I think, a residential, not a residential home, but like work facilities in Montclair came, and we all met with Emerson. And
It wasn't bad.
no,
He's a really nice guy.
yeah. And so now I do that. I still go and meet with my legislators, but that was like the
He
first time.
became a great champion.
Yes, he did.
How
Because
do
of
you,
those kinds of meetings.
Right.
so you go to a legislator, tell a story, a compelling story, and how can you start the conversation? How do you start the conversation? Say, just
Oh, that's a great question. How do you start the conversation? Well, you would, one, you're a constituent, and they all love their regions, right? So if there's something about the region in particular that you want to talk about, that you love, or that you have a complaint about, something, that's always helpful as well. Because overall, you're always a constituent, a voting constituent in their district. And they want their districts to be in good shape. So whatever they could do to help their districts, they want to learn about that. So if there's anything like that, I always think that that's important. But the other part is that our stories that we have in our community are compelling because it's a human story. And it's about a person with a disability who may need some help with, maybe it's work training, or maybe it's a family who needs help, like rescue. And you're doing everything you can, and maybe your child's behaviors are very challenging. And so but you do everything you can to make sure that your child learns and stays safe, and it requires a lot of work from the family. So why is respite important for the family who's constantly on the alert? And maybe some families are up all night, and they have to do shifts. So one of the parents stays up half the night, and they work the other half, and they just are always awake. And that's a story that.
Even more importantly, why does that parent have to fight tooth and nail and go through the appeals process and many levels of delay just to retain that particular service?
Yep.
And when it's dished out in crumbs.
Right, right. So how about the story of why that's important? What it's doing for the family? And then why would you have to make this case for yourself all the time? Just to get a little bit more,
Yeah, well, I mean, we become disability specialists, just like I said.
Yeah.
It prompts us to do that, but I mean, honestly, I don't want to see the next generation of parents going through the same things that I have been doing.
Yeah.
Because I have 3 boys with neurological disabilities. You know, teenager down to early intervention. And so I've learned the trials and tribulations throughout the way, and I'm still learning. However, I look at the parents that are coming in the next generations, and they don't know what to do. And I see the pitfalls all over again, happening right over again.
Yeah.
And why is that? Why is it so not accessible? It's,
Right, right. Well,
I
look,
mean-
it's not charity either. If you think about it this way, that we have said that people with developmental disabilities have some special needs. They need some help, and their families need some support. And with that, they can stay together. And then a person with a disability could grow and learn and become an active, participating citizen in their community, which is so different than what happened 50 years ago, 60 years ago, right? Because people were institutionalized. They were put away. You didn't see people. They weren't contributing. And that's a horror story now, and everybody understands that we wouldn't do that to people anymore. But that was the mindset. And the Lanterman Act said, we're going to support families. We're going to support a whole community, a network of community services that's going to prevent that from happening, and we're going to make sure that people can participate in their communities. So it's a commitment the state has made to say, this is something we want to achieve with our tax dollars. And we all agree, this is a good thing to do. It's not a charity thing that we're doing. It's not anything like that. It's actually an empowerment law. That's why it's so supported by both parties. It's something that everybody understands, and they get it. So that's part of it. It's got to be more
just
of.
like the ADA is pretty much equal access. No matter how you look at it, it's always equal access.
Right.
However, retaining those services is not accessible. Just like a person in a wheelchair can't really go up the stairs all that great, unless if they're into stunts. It's not accessible. Accessing those programs, it's not accessible. There's roadblocks, there's barriers, and delay tactics, and
Yeah. And when you're in a system that's been starved as long as our system has been starved, you can see why people put these roadblocks in there. They slow the system down. They stop the money from flowing because it's limited resources. There aren't money's there. So you can see where incentives may be in place to do that. So we've got to wipe that out. That's got to be completely gone.
therefore accessibility is not being granted.
Yeah, which is the violation
Right.
of federal law. Right? So that's the ADA. So we can't have that, and that's another reason that we need to repair the system immediately. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to move forward. So that's part of our argument as well. So on page 3, I think I mapped out most of what we're doing, but on the bottom of page 3, just sort of listed out what we're saying to legislators, so that you can get an idea of what we're talking about. And just kind of quickly, we mention things depending on where their interests are. We'll mention about how we're on the bottom of the country for funding for rates. That today we're spending 10% less per person than we did in 2007. So we're already in the hole. And so if we got that 10%, it doesn't advance. It just sort of brings it back to 2007 levels. So when things, of course, have increased, cost of living has increased since back then. But at least it was stabilized. So but you can kind of see why the system is in such bad shape. If you're only funding it 10% less than you did then. Now that's accounting for inflation, so that's why the number is 10%. That's when you account for inflation. We talk about that you could be at jeopardy of losing federal funds. The regional centers actually are not able to meet their ratios for the case managers. So they're not meeting their ratios. And that is a violation of Medicaid. So they could come through and find us out of compliance, and we could lose federal dollars there. And so saving the money in this area is actually risking a lot more money in another area.
Our local regional center's budget reports always say the word red,
Oh.
right? The common word term in the budget meetings.
In the red. Well, several of them are, and the whole system-wide, we ran into trouble last year. But we're not funding the growth and the need that's out there. So we're looking at the fact that if you can't meet your case management ratios, then you're going to be in jeopardy of losing the federal dollars. And it could be a lot of money. Because once you lose the money, it takes a long time to get it back. It don't just come in the next week or so. It takes years to get the money. So it's a very dangerous game of federal. The other part is that you have to guarantee the federal government that you have an adequate supply of providers. Because you're paying them, if you pay them an adequate rate, you'll have an adequate supply of providers the support services. It's a requirement in the law. And yet, when we have waiting lists at a provider organization, that means that people are not getting the services. That means we don't have an adequate supply. So we're out of compliance. So these are the kinds of red flags that show up in the federal government in reviewing what's happening in California. Now, that would start to turn around if we get some of the money back from the past. Maybe it doesn't turn it around completely, but at least it would show good faith effort that the state is moving in the direction toward compliance. So we've got a few others that are listed in there. You can check those out. That's in the moment on page 3. But again, it really depends on the legislators we're talking to, what their priorities are, and we talk about the things that are important to them.
Now you work on a legislative level. Do you represent the bureaus like IHSS and Regional Center and all those, or do you oversee them and monitor them, or do you just advocate for them?
We just advocate.
You
Now,
advocate
the
for
regional
them.
centers have their own organization as well. It's called the Association of Regional Center Agencies, and they're one of the groups of the Land Coalition. But we're all nonprofits or community providers of some sort. We're advocacy groups. None of us are government entities, except for the State Council or Developmental Disciplines. But they don't provide services. They're an advocacy organization.
Yeah, because I feel personally as a recipient that what you see is what you get, and whether you like it or not,
Well, it
that's
shouldn't
all
be
there
that
is
way.
going to be.
Right.
And we're going to do things the way we want, whether you like it or not. You don't have a voice, you don't have an opinion. You can come to a board meeting and you can watch it go down. But really, your input is not or your request for information is not going to be acknowledged.
Okay.
Those are the issues I have.
Well, it's not supposed to work that way. You know that commercial where they
Oh.
talk about that?
For example, have you
They
seen
say,
our have you
it
seen our
doesn't work
local,
like that. It's not supposed to work that way.
Have you seen our local regional center?
Well, when you go to the meetings, they're supposed to want to hear.
It's a palace. It's a palace. Do you know that at home we don't even have a floor in our home? So we can't even afford to get by. But we go to the regional center and it's a palace. decked with marble and, I mean, just gorgeous. And we're not even allowed to find out how much they're paying for it. How many millions?
I don't know, a lot. And they rent it.
This is not an issue. I mean, I'm sharing it just because I feel compelled. I'm not really trying to
Right,
beat heads on the wall
right,
over
right.
it.
No, I hear
But
you.
I do
But
feel
some-
compelled that,
So you're thinking, well, they've got enough money.
well, I'm thinking that the allocation, it was definitely inappropriate. I could see if you have workers to house them, you know, but if the workers are doing better than the recipients, something's not doing too well either.
Well, I can tell you though, those workers are not paid that well either, especially compared on the state level to other county workers. They're paid disproportionately lower than the county social workers are paid. And then if you compare them out across the country, it's even worse. So even the regional center case managers are not paid.
Oh, yeah, the
at
actual
competitive
workers,
rates.
yeah, I know, I mean, they even have their own little issues, 'cause, you know, we catch that along the grapevine too.
Yes, yes.
Well, let's talk about the executive portion.
Well, proportionally, it's actually still a small proportion of all the money that needs to spread out.
Yeah,
But I hear what you're saying about it.
Yeah, I'd like you to check it out.
May I ask you a question? When you see the phase one target, so that's the start to contact your legislature, so this the person stayed on the panel.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
all this,
So what we did here with phase one was we looked at legislators who are in power and like they're running a committee,
Okay.
or they're in charge of budget,
Okay.
or they're in the leadership in the legislature. So
Okay.
we want to make sure that these are people who are going to have a lot of influence on the final decisions of where the money goes,
Okay.
where it gets spent. And so we wanted to go to them first. So our first approach was to talk to all of these individuals that are on this list here. And we met with them all, and their staff, and the different budget staff, and all the people who will make these decisions. And we told them what's happening. We brought them all the resources. There are several studies now that show what's happening, and we had these conversations with them. In the meantime, we've been asking parents, family members, the grassroots, to talk to them as well.
For
And
example?
this is the time where, now that we've had all those meetings, this is the time where those people who would really want the grassroots to make sure that they're calling them now and making sure that they understand what's happening. So that's another very important part.
My battery's running low.
Well, go back.
So this whole list here is that first tier of all those leadership type of people who are running the meetings. Health and Human Services Committee, Budget Committee.
Do they have a special education person who in charge of special education?
There is, but we didn't have them on this list because we've been targeting the developmental disabilities
Okay.
budget. That's why.
Related.
Yeah.
When you said that talk to your legislature, you talk about
Yes.
Senate
Okay, now
member
this.
or Senate, or which
Okay.
person do you think?
We're talking about both.
Okay.
Are you?
Okay. So if your member is on the top, that phase one, then we would really, really want you to make sure you contact them pretty quickly.
So just look at yellow page, find your district, where you look at it, what's the contender, all contender.
Oh, on the green sheet that we handed out, there's a way, you sign up on the alerts, there's a place to go, and you put in your zip code,
Okay,
it'll tell you who your legislator is.
okay,
And
great.
then if you put in your, if it doesn't tell you, because sometimes zip codes are cut in the parts, then you put in your whole address, and then it will tell you who your legislator is. So that's how you can find out. And we're talking about, yeah, the Assembly and the Senate.
Okay.
So we've got these individuals listed here on phase one, and like I said, those are the leaders in the legislature for all the different committees. And then the staff as well. Then we're now in phase two. In phase two, we're looking at people who are going to be able, maybe the budget conference committee. And you know how that works with at the end of the year, the Assembly and the Senate have passed their own budgets. And where they're different, you know, like they come together and they try to negotiate that out so that they go, it all be the same. So, and that's the conference committee. So we want to know who's going to be on that. We're kind of guessing on some people, and then some people we know for sure. So we've really been targeting all those people because they're going to be making these kind of decisions, right, of where the money goes at the end. So that's our phase 2 people. Now, if your legislator is not on phase 1 or phase 2, don't get excited. It doesn't mean you're off the hook, right? We need everybody to be on board. Another thing that we're doing here, and you'll see it on page 7, and that is the Bell letter, as we call it. And Senator Jim Bell wrote a letter, and he's been having colleagues sign off, and we've been having a lot of conversations with legislators, and people on the grassroots level have been calling and asking their legislator to sign on to the Bell letter. And the Bell letter supports the 10% increase for the developmental services system, and asks his colleagues to sign on in support of this position. So we've got this list here of all of these legislators is the list that's already on at this moment. But we would like to have as many as possible sign on to the Bell letter to show support in their caucuses for the 10%. Now, in some cases, some of the legislators, we know they're in positions where they're not going to be able to sign on because they're maybe on a budget committee. And then that would look like they've already made a decision when they're supposed to be making the decisions as they go along. So some people won't make those kind of commitments, and some of them will be higher up individuals who are in the leadership who also won't make those kind of commitments. So I wouldn't worry about them too much if your legislator says I can't do it. I would definitely ask and put some pressure to sign the letter, especially if your legislator is in support. But if they're not, the last level would be, could you support this concept in your caucus, just verbally when it comes up, because it hopefully will come up in their caucuses. Will you support the 10%? And see if they'll commit to it. And that's another way to see if you've got some additional support. Now, of course, we would much rather have them sign on to the letter, but some of them have a rule, they just don't sign on to any letter. And then, like I said before, some of them, because of their position, aren't able to do that. But if you can get them at least to say that I'll sign on, or I'll support it in the caucus, I'll stand up and support, then that would be good as well. And in there, you can then write back to them thanking them and put that on your Facebook page. You thank them for saying they would support the letter. So at least, you've got some kind of accountability. Now, obviously, they have to really say that they would do that. Don't say that if they haven't.
Yeah.
So, but that would be another way to get support. So that's really what we're looking for, because in the end, there'll be a certain amount of money that the legislators can spend. The governor has his part of the budget that he's locked into, and he may say to the legislators at the end of the year, here's your part that you could use for your commitments, for your priorities. And we just want to be on that list, the priority list of these legislators when they get to that point. So this is the way for us to do that. And look at the list there, and if you have any questions, then feel free to give me a call. If you don't see your legislator on there, like I said, look it up on that list, the green sheet I gave you, and it'll, if you don't know who your legislator is, and you can find it. If you can't figure it out, call us, because we really want you to get in contact with them, and we'll figure it out for you. We'll have Greg
Yeah.
set up a meeting for you.
That's right.
We have a website for the coalition. It's called WanamanCoalition.org, and that's a place where we're putting together, we're compiling all the different studies where we're getting all this information from, and we're putting it all there so people can see where we're getting it from. We're not just making these things up. These really are true problems in our community, and so we've listed them out there, and you can go to them and download them from our website. It's in a section called Research, and we invite legislators all the time when we meet with them to go visit our website and see for themselves where all the data comes from. In addition, we also leave them with the latest report that the Association of Regional Center Agencies wrote. It's called On the Brink, and that's when it sort of really maps out how bad a condition our system is in and compares us to other states and shows that that the commitment here in California has gone away, and we need to get it back. So they've done a really nice job of illustrating what has happened. So, and that we leave behind. You can find that on our website, LannemanCoalition.org. We also have other ways to try to engage people. We've got, Facebook. You guys are involved in Facebook, right? Is that how you guys all keep together?
Yeah, not Jason, no.
I don't have Facebook. I don't want Facebook.
You don't have, so, do you have Twitter?
No.
Oh, no Twitter? You're not one of those young people.
What do you do?
Emails.
Email.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Before
whoa.
email, I do fax.
Oh, okay, well, we're
Really?
not gonna be faxing.
Really old school.
But we're trying to find different ways that people communicate, right? And so we're doing the Twitter, we've got a Twitter page for the Lanneman Coalition, Facebook,
Do you have a list of that anywhere on one of
and,
these
yes,
pages?
and those are on there.
Which one?
I think I've got them listed here. No, if not, I will send it to you, but the Twitter is, at
Oh, I see it.
Coalition PLA.
You
Okay,
have
I'll get
clips
to it
on
then.
your.
And then our Facebook is Lanneman Coalition, Facebook, LannemanCoalition.org. So that's how you get to those. We're just trying to find a variety of different ways that we can reach out to different people who like to communicate in different ways. So we have a communications campaign to try to improve in how we do that. And none of us are that young, so we're trying to find ways to get to people who do communicate this way. So we're learning quickly, but we're getting better at tweeting. And we're just actually learned what tweeting means. So you're not far behind us. The next part of the presentation was what's happened so far.
You
So,
should, just for a little input,
uh-huh.
you should open a department for people with disabilities that actually have those to.
Skills.
Yeah, those skills to manage the technology.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
Well,
because,
another thing we've done is,
Is
there's a lot of people with disabilities who are on Facebook.
yeah.
And they like to, so they've really been getting engaged
Yeah.
with the Facebook.
Yeah, well, I think it'd be a great position for the ARC to open up. Just-
Yeah.
Just food for thought, elbow nudge.
Yeah, well, I like it, especially when we're all learning. Right? The other thing is that we did hire a company that does support employment to do the drops. There's normally you would hire a courier business and they would drop these messages to all the legislators once a week. And it's a sort of a news kind of clipping thing. And so instead of that, we didn't do the courier and we hired a support employment provider, and they've got people with developmental disabilities who are doing the drops. And we're hoping that they'll
That's awesome.
get stopped and ask them more questions about it, and then they can tell them about their life and why it's important to them. So,
I think it
but we're
gives-
paying them, I mean, it's a job, so we're paying them
Of course,
to do
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah, just like we would the courier service,
Mhm.
Right.
just a different person doing it.
I admire that.
So, there we go, got one. One more comment. But we also have People First in California is a member of the coalition, so, and that's a coalition for South Africans.
Mhm.
We have, now, the
Where's,
other
where's
part,
that? Do you have that somewhere?
their name is, it's part of this logo here, it's the one with the bird, it's in a little circle,
What page
On
are
the
you
front page.
on the
first
front page. And then they're also listed, People First in California. How am I doing on time?
It's 7:56, so just a
Okay.
few minutes left.
Okay, well then I'll kind of go quickly then. So far this year, this is what's happened so far. Last year, we didn't get started until about this time, last year, around March. Just after the hearing, or actually just before the budget hearings last year, we finally got on the same page. And then we started our advocacy. We had 8 different priorities that we listed. And we've made some great advances last year, but that's pretty late in the game just to get together and start. So this year, we started in June, right? So we started having these conversations even before the last budget session was over. We started meeting. And then in July, we met more and more, and then in August, we really had it kind of solidified. So it took us still a long time because it's 19 organizations, it's actually 21 that had to work this through, and 2 of them just didn't do it. So that's why we're 19 this year. But we had worked so early and started working with the administration and with different people in the legislature that we were able to get the message out early, even before the elections. So some of the people we were talking to actually didn't even become legislators, right? They moved on. So, but we wanted to make sure we were still talking to everybody and getting the message out there, because you never know, everybody comes around again. So
Yeah.
we got going early this year. So the good news here is that we've been able to have all those meetings, all those legislators I listed out. We've been meeting with them since January. Actually, December we started, some of them, especially with the staff. And then, so we've had about 60 different meetings now with legislators and staffers and people in administration, so they can be really clear on what it is that we think that our community needs. So that's the good news, that we're way ahead of the game compared to last year. Now, we're asking for a lot of money. So it's a really hard thing to do. And everybody today is asking for money back from the years where money was taken away, and all the different systems that are there, all the safety net systems are needing money back.
In all honesty, I don't see it a problem, because our president will issue a funding on a whim for multi-billion, trillion dollars and things.
Well,
I don't think.
In this
the
case,
whole-
it's the state.
I don't think those
So
are the whole
we'll need our-
disability end. Well, even if it comes through federal provisions, you know, it
This
shouldn't be
one,
that.
this is our state, this is the only way we can do it, is if we can get our state to move on it and put
So
make the commitment.
you're referencing the state's allocation,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, the federal government would pay their part, that's the
Right,
Medicaid
right,
share.
right.
But they only pay 50 cents on the dollar, which is one of the lower in the country.
Mhm.
So there are others who will, for every $4 you spend, the federal government gives you 3. So those states are doing much better in terms of getting support from the Medicaid program. But ours is 50 cents on the dollar. which is,
Other
yeah,
states don't have our cost of living.
on the lower. Yeah, so we should get more, right? Because it's harder to make it by.
For survival, yeah,
Yeah.
it's imperative.
Right. But it just shows that how much harder it is to make it here in this kind of a system, this kind of a model. But what we've done is in October, we had Senator Bell held a hearing, informational oversight hearing in Los Angeles, just to sort of lay it all out. So everything that we had been bringing, we wanted to go out into the community, into Los Angeles, and hear from providers, people with disabilities and family members, what they see is the condition of the community system. So from there, this was the start, this was October, so you still had elections coming up in November. But they kicked it off then, and from there, they wrote a letter in support of getting a COLA in the system, and getting more money, and doing something to help fix the problems. And that's really where it started. They started with a letter, they got a sign off of maybe about 10 different legislators who joined in, and all supported this concept of doing something to fix this system and the problems. So, and that was October. We had the election, and then everything settles in the building for a while. But we in the Leonard Coalition were on the same page finally, right? So we could then begin our conversations with people about how we saw the problems and how we saw the solutions coming through. So that was good. It allowed us a chance to really get a head start. Then in December, we started up and really met with a lot of staffers. Then January came, and the governor's budget comes out, and there's no additional money to help support people with developmental disabilities. They fund the growth and some of the deficit that was noticed, and that was it. Nothing that people were asking for. The 10% that we were asking for was completely ignored. So That was our beginning point, the governor's budget. So then we got new chairs assigned to the committees, because now we got a whole new building of legislators. So we had a lot of new people in office. So we had to meet with them right away and tell them about developmental disabilities. And some of them never heard of a developmental
Right.
disability. So we were explaining the whole system to them.
Last I checked on my ballots, they were either teachers, cops, CEOs, CPAs. Nobody was a disability anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a small part of, of the community.
No, I'm looking for it on my ballot. I just don't see it.
Yeah. But if you look at in general, disability makes up actually a big part, 20% of the total population has a disability.
So
We're
the
only
gen-
1%.
So the general population, only 1% is a disability?
Is a developmental disability.
Or developmental
Yeah.
disability, okay. So the budget is 5% for
It's
the,
1 to 3 depending on the studies, but
okay,
pretty much 1%.
okay, 1%. For the total budget is 5% for disability budget?
Oh, the total budget for developmental disabilities is $5 billion.
Or
How
5
much?
billion?
$5 billion
Okay.
to support 280,000 people.
On a federal or state?
That's both. That's combined. So then the next thing that happened was in February, the director was finally confirmed. So we didn't really have an official director, but he had pretty much been there. So but the important part about this was that our director's confirmation hearing, most confirmation hearings, there's not that much going on, right? There's some background, somewhat like a job interview kind of thing. But like this director's confirmation hearing had some very tough questions thrown his way. And the legislators on the panel, the Rules Committee, were very familiar with our community and the problems that were going on. And so they were pretty tough with him and made sure that he understood what they were expecting and that they weren't going to take it easy on him and that he should be on notice. And I thought it was really good. For one, that they took it so serious and that they knew so much about our community. And they also talked a lot about the developmental centers and the problems in the developmental centers. So this is, like I said, it's a small part of the whole budget, but all these people on that committee were very familiar with our system and asked some very poignant questions. So it was a good start for us. They confirmed him. He had a lot of support. We were very supportive of his nomination. And so it was unanimous confirmation, and he had unanimous support. Nobody opposed it. But the good thing was that they didn't take it easy on him. Emma had a little picture there of him walking away with his suit chewed up a little bit, but happy. The next thing that they did that was important for us was that the Assembly Budget Committee, the subcommittee for Health and Human Services, wanted to hold an informational hearing first before they did their actual budget hearings. And they wanted 3 departments, or 3 areas. They wanted foster care, healthcare, and developmental services. And those were the 3 areas that they wanted to hear from ahead of time, before they heard all the other budget areas. Which was really significant for us because it's not a typical thing for a department our size. So it was a great opportunity for us to talk about what's going on in our community. And that report that I gave to you on the on poverty and the relation of our community and poverty is what we used. I got to give the testimony, and it's what I used to provide the testimony on the overview of the impact on our community and what sort of the status of what's happening in developmental services. So it was supposed to be a 3-minute, 4-minute presentation. As you can see, it's like 3 pages long or something, so it was really a long presentation, but they gave me a lot more than they said they were going to, which was, I appreciate it. But I didn't cover everything. And then the department got a chance to tell their side of the story as well. It was a good start for us in our community. And that was February. And then after that, in March, we had our first budget hearing, and it was in the assembly side. So we packed the halls, the building there. So the whole room was full of our folks. And then the overflow upstairs was full. And then there were so many people that we also filled the cafeteria, because they have a TV in the cafeteria. So we had sent people in there as well. So, and then we had people walking halls too, just to make sure people understood that we were there and meeting with their legislators at the same time. But we did a press conference earlier that day and a big rally out in front of the Capitol prior to that, because that hearing was at 1. So we had an earlier one in the day. And it was a great hearing, and we've got some great film on that, and we can send that to you, you can see it. And then there were a lot of articles written about what's happening in our community. And it was all leveraged off of the rally and then the budget hearing. So that was our first crack at it, and that was on the 4th. And then on the 12th, we had another hearing in the Senate.
Of which year?
Of this year,
Oh.
March 12th. So that one is a picture here, and that picture there shows, again, a packed room. So standing room only in that room, and then again upstairs, we filled it up again. Now this was harder, because this one was in the morning, so it's harder to get so many people, but it's still, the whole room was full, and the overfill was
So-
full as well.
When your grassroots support is more like a parent or advocate, what kind of people that went there?
This room was full of parents, self-advocates,
Okay.
and providers, and
Okay.
regional, the whole community was really
Okay.
well represented. It was a very diverse community
Okay.
in the hearing.
Okay.
And it went all day long, and it went longer than they had actually anticipated. And it went on till like 4:30, 5 o'clock, something like that. So
Okay.
it was all day long, and they committed to listening to the testimony of all the advocates. So they stayed and listened the whole time. Same thing with the assembly. So our legislators were really, they were really great in terms of making sure that everybody had a chance to talk, and they were really attentive. So they were really listening in on what was happening and the stories from our community. So that's really good news for us, that they did that. And they were also very comprehensive in their agendas. So they covered a lot of different parts. And then I got opportunities to speak in both of them. And so you definitely want to see me talk. Well, it was a good chance to, again, make sure they understood what's happening. So those are the things that have happened so far. We also had a public policy conference at the ARC in United Cerebral Palsy Days. So we had a lot more in attendance this year. And then we had the celebration of the entitlement, which was in March. And the actual date of the decision that established the entitlement was last Saturday. And that was
This is
the
the
ARC
Rankin
versus
law.
DDS decision in 1985. And the Supreme Court, the California Supreme Court at the time said that yes, indeed, California does have an entitlement. So the IPP is an actual legal contract for the family and the person with a disability. And what's in there is an entitlement for the person. So, and that was when we sued the state back then, and won eventually. It took like 3 years, it took 3 years to win. But in the end, we won, and it is established today that California has an entitlement.
So it's
We had a celebration of that,
It's 1985.
1985 decision. Yeah.
What month? March?
March.
What's the date?
I don't remember, what was last Friday, what was last Saturday, whatever last Saturday was.
21st.
When you say, when you reference that California has an entitlement,
Uh-huh.
what is that under? Is that-
That's-
So if you go to a regional center and you qualify for services,
Mhm.
then you are served, right? You get an IPP, and then you
Mhm.
figure out the services that you need, and the services come to you right away, within a month or so, right? In other states, you go and you qualify, and then you wait to on a waiting list, and you can be on a waiting list for most of your life.
So what would
A
that
lot of
be?
people, like children, will go in early and then wait in the waiting list. and
Is this entitlement under the Lanterman Act or is it something?
Right.
Okay.
It means that everybody.
I didn't know if there was something I didn't know about that. It's just
Yeah, it means
waiting to
everybody
hear.
with a developmental disability in California is eligible for services immediately. Within, it takes 120 days to process everything.
Mhm.
But you're eligible, there's no waiting list. Other states have waiting lists. There's 300,000 people on a waiting list.
May I ask you a
It cuts-
question? What made you start this journey of involvement in this community, have this ARC, become the director of the ARC? What's your personal story? Have the connection with the community, have the passion and compassion for the family?
Uh-huh. That's a great story. Why would I do something like this?
Yes.
This is not easy, right? And really, I started in this field when I was in college working group homes, but nothing really, wasn't anything about that sort of compelled me, other than just the sense of this is a group of people who I got to know really well, adults in particular in the beginning, that for whatever reason they were isolated, they were segregated from society, and the people I was supporting, they were in a group home, right? So they weren't really physically segregated, but you could tell that society was not opening up. I just felt that there was a lot of bullying that I would see that wasn't obvious bullying. And it was sort of this sense of this is wrong, and it just kind of tore at me a lot when I first started working and getting to know people, and I couldn't stand it anymore. So I felt so connected to the individuals, and yet it just wasn't right what was happening to them. So I got addicted to trying to address this wrong in society, and it seemed like it was a hidden problem that nobody knew about, and that I was being, it was being revealed to me at this time in my life. I was younger, but still, it just really made me angry, and what made me want to fight for the rights of people with disabilities.
Usually people in this community, usually they are parents,
Right.
or they have close relationship with people with a disability,
Right.
and they have basically part of their life.
Right.
It's,
And that was my story. I didn't have that. I just was impacted by what I saw, and I became really close to people who I met. And then when I became a case manager at a regional center, I worked with families, and I was blown away by the families and their stories, and how hard it is, and that it didn't seem like enough was being done to help the families. So it just kind of completed my whole vision of this community. I just had to do something, and got, like I said, addicted to being with this community.
I think work with the community, on one hand you have the passion, another hand you have a tremendous patience. You have to take a no as part of the future answer for yes. Everything starts with a no, but you have to walk through, gradually turn the no to half yes and then full yes. You have this undeterred determination to go through this journey. You're going to heard a lot of no on the way. So even though it's no, we have a way to turn it to yes. Grasp the support, have the resources, and tell your story, change people's mind.
I think that's a great ending, because that's how all this works. Is that even if you do get the no's when you meet with the legislators, that it's just it's a temporary.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get it. Last year we had a lot of no's in the end. This year we have a lot less no's than
How
we had
many
last year.
in
And
your-
we're making good traction.
Okay, you went to the budget hearing, you went to these conferences, you made a proposal on behalf of this community represent. How many times do you think you get a 50 yes or 50 no, or 70% no, 30% yes? Usually, what's the ratios you think?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what. Here's what I know is that this year alone we've gotten 0 no's.
Oh, great.
Nobody has said no to us. So everybody is starting to get that this is a real important issue, and it's a real problem. And so far this year, we've had other people say, does it have to be so much? Or would you do it for part of the community and not the other part of the community? But nobody has said no. And our answer back is that the entire community is in bad shape, and we all need help at the same time together.
So in your projection, the 10% increase, what's the possibility you think you can get a 10% increase? Just by projection, what do you think based on so far you have the progress we have made? So
100%, we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it, maybe not all this year,
okay.
maybe we'll get it all this year. But we're gonna definitely get it because it's necessary. It's the only way to move this system forward.
Okay.
I got a whole bunch of stuff in here for you. I know we've gone over our time, but I've got our Facebook address and our Twitter. We gotta get this guy on Twitter.
I
Yeah.
know. I'll send you a
We have
teenager.
YouTube. How about
and
that?
they'll-
YouTube. You like watching videos?
I think the
We
only
have a-
one thing I learned from this,
Yeah.
I'm going to contact my legislature
Good. Good.
and tell them what I learned from ARC. Tell them
Okay.
start my conversation. This is what I learned from ARC, and I meet you in person, and you recommend to see my legislature, tell my story, the community story, my personal story, and how you can represent us in the Senate or in the legislature to make the changes, at least the 10% start this year. So that's the story I can start.
Good. Good. Well, then my work is done.
Your work is done.
Thank you. Okay, everybody.
Thank you
And
so
if
much.
anybody